Welcome to the Georgia Highlands College Math 97 and Math 99 tutorial videos. In this video segment, we'll be answering the question, how do you factor a polynomial using grouping and having to rearrange the terms? Well, the first step in this process is to actually rearrange the terms so that you're matching up terms with common factors in them. Secondly, we'll group those terms with common factors, and then we'll factor the GCF out of each of those groups. Then we'll finish off by factoring out the greatest common binomial factor and checking with multiplication. Let's take a look at an example. We have the example here, xy minus 7 minus x plus 7y. And if you notice, the first two terms in this polynomial don't seem to have any factors in common, and neither do the last two terms in the polynomial. So we need to do some rearranging before we can begin grouping these terms together. And I notice here that I have a factor of x in the third term as well as in the first, and there's a factor of 7 in the second and in the fourth. So as long as I travel the sign with my term, I can rearrange these in any order I'd like. So I'm just going to rearrange the terms in the order of xy, negative x, and I'll go ahead and do the positive 7y first, and then the negative 7 term, just to keep my signs in uniform going all the way through. So the next step in this process is to actually group those terms with common factors. So I'll group my xy and negative x term, and then I'll group my 7y and my negative 7 term. We'll continue this process by factoring the GCF out of each of the groups we've created. So the GCF for the first group is x. And when we divide that GCF out of each of the terms, we're left with y minus, now I'm going to stop here because x divided by x is 1. And sometimes students won't write that 1. They'll think that it's just understood to be there. It's only understood to be there when it's being multiplied, and in this case it's being subtracted. So we actually need to write the 1 down there. Moving on to the second group, we have a common factor of positive 7, and when I divide positive 7 out of each of the terms, I'm left with y, and once again negative 7 divided by 7 gives me negative 1. Now you should recognize that we have a common binomial factor. Well, that common binomial factor can be factored by dividing it out of each of the terms and bringing it out front. And then our next factor is made up of what's left over. So y minus 1 times x plus 7 is the factored form of the polynomial xy minus 7 minus x plus 7y. Let's check through multiplication. So we'll simply multiply our factored answer by distributing each term in the first binomial with each term in the second binomial. So y times x, putting it in alphabetical order, gives us a term of xy. And y times positive 7 gives positive 7y. Moving on to distributing the negative 1. Negative 1 times x is negative x, and negative 1 times 7 is negative 7. Once again, we can rearrange these terms as long as we travel the sign with them. So let's see if we can match that original polynomial and rearrange into xy minus 7 minus x plus 7y. And sure enough, we end up with the same polynomial that we began with. So we are safe to say that y minus 1 times x plus 7 is the factored form of the polynomial xy minus 7 minus x plus 7y. I hope this has been helpful for you in learning how to factor by grouping when you have to rearrange the terms. If you have any other questions about this method, please contact your Highlands instructor.